We ended our discussion with small intestine. We insert here accessory structures, the accessory organs, and there's three big ones here. We put them here because this is where they dump their contents into. They dump their contents into the small intestine, specifically the duodenum, as you can kind of see from the picture here. Again, this is the first segment of the small intestine right here. Okay, the duodenum, only roughly around 10 inches. But here's the liver. Here is the gallbladder that sits right underneath that sucker. And it is green, okay, when you look at it on dissection. And then right here, Mrs. Pancreas. These are our three accessory organs here that we're going to, really be talking about here with the GI system. Again, food, chyme does not pass through them. Otherwise, they'd be part of the GI tract proper, right? The tube, that is. But food does not pass through this. Chyme does not pass through this. Bolus does not pass through this, okay? So they dump their contents into the small intestine, hence accessory, right? And they do a lot of stuff. A lot of stuff. The liver especially does a lot of stuff, right? From a nutrition standpoint, this is what the liver does, right? This is what the liver does. It does a number of other things as well. But from a nutrition standpoint, it processes and stores the vast majority of nutrients. Everything that gets absorbed goes through that hepatic portal system to the liver. Hepatic means liver. We get that stuff in the liver, and now the liver can manipulate it. And we'll start seeing that a little bit here when we start talking about carbohydrates in a little bit. It makes cholesterol. It synthesizes cholesterol. Okay? And we'll look at that when we look at lipids in the next section. All right? It'll help to create some very low density and some low density lipoproteins and high density lipoproteins. Okay. Again, cholesterol is not an evil thing. You need it to make stuff, a lot of things. The third thing that the liver does that most people do not remember at all is that it makes the bile. It does not store it. Stored in the gallbladder. Stored in the gallbladder. Okay? A common thing screwed up on the exam is this simplistic little concept. The liver is who makes the bile. That's why you can have your gallbladder removed and you can still digest fats. It's not as effective, but you can still eat your fabulous fats. Unfortunately, you've probably eaten way too many fabulous fats and some not so fabulous fats, which is why you had it removed from your body in the first place. But the liver makes it, pumps it, basically, to the gallbladder where it stores it and concentrates it. While the bile is in the gallbladder, it sucks out, reabsorbs water from it. Water is a component of bile, along with a bunch of other things. As it sits within that gallbladder, we actually reabsorb some water. And that helps us to concentrate the bile that's within. So when you do consume fats, and they get into that duodenum, and that cholecystokinin gets released to stimulate the gallbladder to squirt. It's going to release a little bit of that bile. Doesn't have to release a whole lot. It's concentrated. So we can squeeze out just a little bit, and it's able to do what it do. And we'll talk about that much more specifically here when we start talking about lipids in the next unit. If you consume a lot of fat, it doesn't stay in there long enough, it being bile. So if it's not concentrated, you're squirting out weak bile. And weak bile just means it's not very effective at doing what it's ultimately going to do. Help us to break down fats in the small intestine, okay? And that's where we get the gallbladder issues, cholelithiasis, gallstones, and ultimately the removal of your gallbladder. The third dude involved here with the accessory structures is the pancreas. The pancreas secretes Well, the pancreas does a few different things. Okay. And I didn't put a third function. I should put a third function on here, to be honest. The pancreas produces digestive enzymes. Okay. An amylase, a lipase, some proteases. I think I have them listed on the next slide. Digestive enzymes, one for every macronutrient that you got. It also produces bicarbonate ions. Whenever you see bicarbonate ion, think buffer. Okay. It helps to buffer that acidic content entering into the duodenum. Remember that chyme is super acidic, right? It's been bathing in a pH of 1 or pH of 2 for a few hours. So when it dumps into the duodenum there, this bicarbonate ion is going to really help to neutralize that chyme so you don't have an ulcer develop in your duodenum. The third thing it does, which is pretty important, it produces it produces hormones. Okay, two pretty important ones: insulin and glucagon. Insulin and glucagon. It does a couple other hormones, some somatostatins as well, but insulin and glucagon are the two major hormones that the pancreas also does. So the pancreas, I mean, from a nutrition standpoint, these three organs do a lot of different things. You know, if you want to add other stuff to liver, it processes red blood cells. It helps to recycle old defective red blood cells. So it's involved with the breakdown of red blood cells, helping us to make new ones. Okay.
So this might be a really dumb question.
I love questions. What do you got?
What is glucagon, or how do you say it?
Glucagon?
Yeah.
Insulin and glucagon, they are hormones.
So what does it like specifically do? I know what insulin does and
What's insulin?
How you need it.
What's insulin?
Oh, okay, gotcha.
What's insulin?
Gotcha.
What's insulin do? What do you got?
Doesn't it help regulate your blood sugar?
Yes, and so does glucagon, really. Whenever you consume carbohydrates and get that glucose in your blood, insulin is secreted to help facilitate getting that glucose from the blood into the cell. Okay. And so this is after eating. All right. So after eating, blood sugar levels go way high. And when they go way high, that's when insulin gets secreted. As a few hours goes and your glucose levels start to drop within the blood, because insulin doing what it do. As glucose levels start to drop within the blood, they get below a certain level, and then the body releases glucagon. The pancreas releases glucagon, and this gets glucose from storage. And we're going to start talking about this in chapter 5 here in just a little bit. And so glucagon helps to get glucose levels to rise back up. Okay. So these two hormones, insulin and glucagon, are both involved with helping to regulate sugar levels in the blood. And we'll dive into that a hell of a lot more in chapter 5. When it comes to some of the enzymes that are secreted here, these are just enzymes. These are not hormone. How do I know that these are enzymes? Because of that. Remember, whenever we see ASE on the end of something, you know it's an enzyme. Of course, there's an exception to every dang rule, right? And that would be here. Okay, there's your exception. There's no ASE on the end of those. But every time you see ASE, think enzyme. Pancreatic amylase, pancreatic lipase, trypsin and chymotrypsin. There are a lot of them. I think the book labels them all, lists them all out. I don't need you to know every damn one. Okay, I want you to know those two, trypsin and chymotrypsin. All right, those are the two biggies right now. All of those three dudes right there come from the pancreas. It's in its name for the most part. This one isn't, of course, exception. You just got to remember it. Amylase is a starch, so it helps us to digest starch. Lipase is an enzyme that helps us to break down lipids. Trypsin and chymotrypsin, this helps us to break down proteins. Okay, but again, these three individuals are from the pancreas. Everybody else is secreted by the intestinal cells. Okay. I'm trying to spell intestine. It's not working. Intestine, pancreas. Okay. Because something that could be asked is who secretes these? Pancreas, intestinal cell. What does that do? Pancreatic amylase, secreted by the pancreas, helps us to break down starch, helps us to digest starch. Okay. So if I was to ask a question on an exam, list and briefly describe 4 enzymes associated in the small intestine or secreted into the small intestine, you would say, hopefully, 4 of these individuals. You could say pancreatic amylase, pancreatic lipase, trypsin, chymotrypsin. Okay. You could say pancreatic amylase, peptidases, maltase, intestinal lipase. I'm going to use a different color just to hammer home a point here. Let's go red. That's what they say is alarming color. Pancreatic amylase, intestinal lipase. We have lingual earlier. Lingual, that's an A. Lipase. What do all of these do? Anybody. What do all these do? It's okay. What do all those do? What's the function?
Is it to break down food, right? But
Which type of food? Which type of macro?
Carbohydrates.
Lipase helps us to break down what's in the word.
Oh, fats.
Yep. Lipids, fats. Okay. Do we see we have 3 different lipases? Okay. So if you put on the exam, if I ask you to give me, enzymes associated or enzymes secreted into the small intestine, okay, and you just put lipase, did you answer the question as correctly as possible? This is where everybody that I see here should start doing this. Go do this. Caleb, do this. Shake your head side to side. No. There you go. No. Lingual lipase, who secretes it? What's that word mean? Good thing we moved the test back. What's lingual mean? Tongue. Tongue. More specific. More specifically there, Keith. The tongue. Pancreatic. What does that tell you? You were. Pancreatic. What does that tell you? It's coming from the damn pancreas. Intestinal lipase. What does that tell you? It's coming from the damn intestine. Okay. So do you see how if you answered lipase, I am going to be that guy that gives you maybe partial credit, maybe no credit. It just depends on my mood that day. Okay. I want you to understand the difference between enzymes. Lingual lipase is secreted by the tongue. The tongue is, hopefully you know this, in your mouth. It doesn't do a dang thing until it gets into the stomach. pancreatic lipase, intestinal lipase, they are not secreted in the mouth. They are not secreted in the stomach. They are secreted into the small intestine via the pancreas and via the intestinal cells that line the thing. That is specificity. That is being specific, and that is being very correct. Because if you just said lipase, I'm going to assume you don't know, because there are multiple ones. Is the one secreted in your mouth going to do a whole heck of a lot of stuff in the mouth? No, because it needs an acid content. Lingual lipase becomes active in the stomach. Pancreatic lipase is not secreted into the stomach. Neither is intestinal lipase. Okay, that is the specificity that I'm looking for when I look at these essay type questions or short answer type questions, or however you want to look at how those questions are worded. Things where you have to write stuff down. Okay? Specificity, specific, be specific. They're specific things. They come from different things. If you don't have a pancreas, holy smokes, you don't have digestive enzymes. You don't have hormones. Cystic fibrosis, those individuals, they produce an exorbitant amount of mucus. That mucus blocks those ducts within the pancreas, and they have a very difficult time digesting things, because the ducts in which all of these digestive enzymes get secreted into the small intestine cannot occur. If I go back here to this picture, get rid of that. Here you can see this duct. Here you can see the duct. So these cells that are found here in this pancreas release those enzymes in through this duct, through the sphincter of Oddi, because it's a cool ass name to know. Sphincter of Oddi. I won't ask it, but it's cool. Sphincter of Oddi, and it gets dumped into the duodenum. Okay, here's your gallbladder full of bile. Goes up through these various different ducts right here, and through the little sphincter of Oddi into the duodenum. Okay, if you don't have a gallbladder, if it's removed, it still comes down. Okay, it's just not as concentrated. All right, and with cystic fibrosis, these individuals have this duct blocked because of too much mucus production. So they have to take digestive enzymes with food, which is going to be really effective for them, because they don't have any, unfortunately. But there's been research to suggest that digestive enzymes, their effectiveness is really not as good as what we like to think they are. So, because and that's because of the pH. The pH of the mouth is way different than the pH of the stomach, different than the duodenum. So you got to have a digestive enzyme that can survive in multiple different environments. So that's why it's difficult for digestive enzymes to be so effective. Again, the major site that we're talking about when it comes to digestion is the small intestine. Why? I mean, I think we've ascertained that. Okay, a lot of enzymes are being secreted into it. Okay, so a lot of enzyme activity there. There's peristalsis, there's segmentation. When you think of those two things, you primarily think of this locale. Okay, but again, it's happening from stem to stern when it comes to that digestive tract.